When it comes to the use of participles, you've already met quite a lot of this again already. You need to think first of all, if it helps you, about the idea of a wooden translation. How might you translate this in such a way that it would just give you a starting point? And to do this, we would say untying for the active present and having untied for the active aorist. And that's giving you the ing of the present participle in English and the ing or the ed of the past participle. Thinking about the idea, the present is simultaneous with the main verb, and the aorist is giving you a sequence. It's prior to the main verb. So the idea is that whatever is expressed using a present participle has happened at the same time as the main verb, and whatever happens in the aorist has happened prior to the main verb. That's your basic idea, but actually there are a lot of things you can do with this. The 5 core things you learn in this chapter are listed on this slide. The first of which you've met already as nouns. Ho, legon, the one who speaks, the speaker. And you could demonstrate it was a female by saying hair legusa now, and demonstrate that you've got a female speaker. What are the new ones you've got? Causal, concessive, instrumental. To be fair, I'm going to say these are nice to have. Don't worry. Because if you didn't translate these as causal, concessive, or instrumental, you might lose nuance. I don't think you'd necessarily lose meaning. So it's worth bearing these in mind, but it's not going to be the be-all and end-all if you find that they're just a bit much to have to think about, particularly abstractly. We can think about it more when you see them in context. And one of the nice examples is the first causal one that you're given in the Nativity. Matthew 1:19, Yosef dehoana dikaios own. You've got being just. Because he was a just man, is he? You've got being just. You've got being just. If you just said Joseph, her husband, being just, it wouldn't be the end of the world. But carrying on that sentence is, he wanted to divorce her in secret. It's explaining his character. Because he's a good person, a just person, he wants to be able to divorce her in secret. So if you said because he was just, using the participle own to explain the sentence, then you might gain some nuance. This kind of thing is going to be associated with the participle own, usa on, the participle of the verb to be. So expect to see that if you're thinking causal. Concessive. This is the idea that you might use a participle to set a background information, which is then used to contextualise and negate what's going on elsewhere in the sentence. So gnontes, ton theon. This is a kind of absurd example because it's obvious. Horse theon edoxasan. Knowing God, they did not glorify him as God. Now that is ludicrous from a faith point of view, because if you know God, then of course you would glorify him as God. So because it's so that sense of ludicrousness here is expressed grammatically using the participle and then the uch. There's a contradiction between the background state of knowing God and then not acting as though you know God. So it would make much sense to say, although they knew God, they did not glorify him as God, because you're pointing out that there's a contradiction here. If you don't point out a contradiction, it's not the end of the world. But if you put that concessive word, although, in, then you might give some further nuance to this. The final example here, 1 Timothy 4:16. You've got tutogapoion. It's a key bit. For doing this, blah, 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 things will happen. You will save yourself and those who hear you. You could just translate it as that, and people would understand that it's the act of doing something that saves you. But you could also think, well, actually, if it's the doing it that saves us, then the doing it is instrumental in causing our salvation, and therefore we've got here as a participle acting in a way that gives us an instrumental idea, the means through which the verb happens. So the participle, the doing this, is giving you the means of salvation. It is the instrument of your salvation. So you might want to say, by doing this. If you didn't, you wouldn't necessarily lose very much. If you did, it would nuance it and give us a sense that you have more of a feel for the range of ways in which Greek can use its participles. But don't worry about those three too much. By far the most important thing to bear in mind is number 5 in place of imperatives and infinitives. When you get go and spread the good news, for example, you're going to get something along the lines of Alphontes euangelisate. Euangelite. Having gone, proclaim the good news. Greek is much more likely to use participle plus imperative or participle plus infinitive than it is to put two imperatives or two infinitives together. So if you get a phrase, come and see, go and spread the good news, come and talk to me, all of those sort of X and Y type orders you get in the Bible are expressed using a participle followed by an imperative, not two imperatives. You wouldn't want to translate that as having gone, spread the good news. You would probably want to express that as go and spread the good news. Aware of the fact that how Greek uses participles includes to give the impact of an imperative in conjunction with another imperative. So you are not mistranslating things by translating it that way. You are understanding at a grammatical level that the way Greek uses participles is different to the way that English uses participles, but we are expressing the same idea. Those are your main uses for participles. We can nuance those further as you meet interesting ones in Luke, but I hope that gives you a good starting point for now.